Welcome to All Set for Sunday, a podcast for busy and distracted Catholics to be a little more prepared for Sunday Mass. My name is Scott Williams. My co-host is Jeff Traylor. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Scott.
How's it going, bud?
Good, man. Just here. It's a nice, wonderful week. I don't know. It's good.
Okie dokie, artichoke.
Sure. Hey, banter stuff.
Father Peter Marshall, a friend of the podcast, regular, recurring.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm good.
You look good.
Thanks.
You've been working out?
No.
No.
Well, like hardly working.
Yeah. You used to do a whole lot of walking. Do you still walk?
I do now that the weather's getting a little bit better. I'm back out walking the trails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair weather walker.
Yeah.
You do have a significant amount of trails on your property.
On the property, and then there's a really nice city trail up in Beech Grove that I like to walk too.
Nice.
So, yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Beech Grove is known for their city trails. Yeah.
And fights in Walmart.
And fights. I wasn't gonna say it.
You're listening and you're unsure. Google it. It's interesting.
Don't go on Black Friday to the Walmart in Beech Grove.
No.
Unless you want to.
Look, if you're looking for a fight.
Sure.
Yeah. Yep. All right. We ready for the 2-minute drill, Jeff?
Yeah. I'm all
still
set.
in Lent.
We are. Fifth Sunday.
How many
Fifth
are
Sunday
there?
of Lent. Well, there's 7 if you count Palm Sunday and Easter. But there's just 5 numbered
But
Sundays.
Easter's not
No.
a
it's not.
Lent Sunday.
So 6.
6.
But one
But
is Palm Sunday.
Palm Sunday is a Lent Sunday.
So 6, right?
Right.
I got it right. Good. All right. I think I'm good for today.
All
I'm going to end on top. No, it's the 5th Sunday in Lent. Our first reading, non-scrutinies, because we're going
Your
non-scrutinies.
B for life.
Your B for life, or at least for your
Till
B.
next year.
Yep. Our first reading comes from Jeremiah chapter 31. So Jeremiah unveils, last week we talked about covenants. We've been talking about covenants a lot. Jeremiah unveils a new divine promise, a new covenant. Not like the old ones that were on stone tablets, but these ones are written on the hearts of God's people. Just cute, right? This is a different God, right? Like he's softening up on us. But this is marked by intimacy, personal relationship, that like deep connection where we not only recognize and observe God's law, but it becomes a part of us and lives within us. And it just talks about God's deep connection to us, his unwavering commitment to our spiritual renewal, how much he loves his people. So our response this week, banger, full banger.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah. Create a clean heart in me, oh God. Maybe not in that order.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking create in me a clean heart, oh God. Right?
Yeah.
I think it's a banger.
Never heard of it.
What? Sorry about the poor music that you're experiencing at liturgy, but
I guess.
I think that's yeah. And then the verses, I can't even hear the verses.
There's going way back in my past, a Christian songwriter named Rich Mullins did an amazing song out of this psalm.
Didn't Rich Mullins do the song Lullaby?
Maybe.
Is that right? Maybe that's somebody else.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's Usher.
You think so? All right, Usher then. Never mind. Our second reading comes from famous Christian artist Usher.
Yeah.
Our second reading comes from Hebrews, which is interesting. Second reading from Hebrews. But it paints this vivid picture of Jesus' humanity and obedience, and talking about here's how he came to us. Here's how he was obedient to us. Despite being the Son of God, he learned that through his humanity, he had to be obedient. He had to suffer. He submits to the will of the Father. This is perfect obedience. And because of that perfect obedience, we now have this source of eternal salvation. And just really emphasizes his role as high priest, savior of humanity, those roles that he plays for us.
Nice.
And then nice. I like that.
That's good. Noise.
And then our gospel reading, our gospel is John, chapter 12, 20 to 33. Some Greeks who had come to worship at the Passover feast came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and asked him, "Sir, We would like to see Jesus." Philip went and told Andrew. Then Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Amen, amen, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls on the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. Whoever loves his life loses it. Whoever hates his life in this world will preserve it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me where I am. There also will be my servant will be. The Father will honor whoever serves me. I am troubled now. Yet what should I say? Father, save me for this hour, from this hour. But it was for this purpose that I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from the heaven. I have glorified it and will glorify it again. The crowd then heard it and said it was thunder. But others said, an angel has spoken to him. Jesus answered and said, the voice did not come for my sake, but for yours. Now is the time of judgment on this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. And when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw everyone to myself. He said this indicating the kind of death he would die.
Nice.
That was rough. Well, that was like the most rough.
Like me reading it at 7:30.
Is it? Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Just too early. I apologize, everybody. That was bad. I usually do better.
That's all right. We'll get them next time.
Thanks.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Father Peter, did Jeff get anything wrong? Other than
He corrected all the things he got wrong. So
Good.
yeah.
Thank you.
So yes. Those of you keeping home or square.
Mostly just words he got wrong.
Right.
Just said words.
Yeah. His ideas were solid.
Roads.
Roads.
It's one of my favorite movie quotes. All that scrutiny talk that we had last week and about different readings and stuff. We did year B readings at the mass that I went to.
Same.
But had the catechumens there. So is that legit?
Was this my mass?
No.
Because that's what
That's
we
what you
did.
did?
Yeah,
Is that's fine? You can do that?
we
Yeah.
did it.
You didn't.
Okay.
You didn't say words.
Nobody.
So you don't have to do the scrutinies if you have This is on my dumb questions list, so maybe we
right.
should hold on that.
Oh, never mind. All right. Well, on with the scrutinies. Father Peter, what are you preaching on this weekend?
The scrutiny.
I mean, not the scrutinies.
I think one of the things.
You think there's a strong correlation to people that prepare their homily based on
Our
the
podcast
podcast versus
Ooh.
which readings they
That's
they
how we
preach
can.
on?
That's how we can tell. Ooh.
I'm not saying there isn't a strong link, but
I think there's also a correlation for people that drive electric cars to vanity plates. Strong correlation.
yes.
I was going to the airport and they have all these like EV plug-in areas and
Right.
like 90% of those cars had vanity plates about their car being electric.
I mean, if you're going to spend the cash, then what's a vanity plate on top of
I don't know.
An
You know where they're
electric car.
saving money at?
the gas?
And parking spaces.
Are they free parking spaces?
I don't know. They get good ones though.
They do get good ones. Yeah.
I'll get an electric car just for the parking spaces. Talking about now parking spaces in our heart. Tell us about what you're preaching on this weekend, Father.
I think Jeff
This is off the rails.
Jeff raised a good point at the beginning, talking about the shift from
When he said hello.
Hi.
from
No. Remember, I screwed that up too. Forgot.
when Father Christian's not going to know what to edit out in this episode because it's
We
like
got you.
banter woven all
We
through.
got you. 10-second skip. 10-second skip.
The God is shifting from the law to the covenant of grace and shifting from the law written on tablets of stone to written on our hearts. He's showing us that even though the church is saying to us in selecting these for Lent, that even though we are making sacrifices in this season, it's not an earning of our salvation. It's to, as the author of the letter to the Hebrews said, it's so that we might learn obedience in relationship with God, right? So that's kind of where we're headed. I think the gospel reading is one of the ones, a time where I feel bad for the disciples because they're like, hey, Jesus, some people are here, they want to talk to you. And he just goes off into this like strange eschatological end times talk. And they're like, but so is that a no? Like, you, you're not going to talk to them?
I found it funny too though, because the voice of God speaks
Right.
and they're like, oh, what were they saying to you? He's like, that wasn't for me, you idiots.
Right.
Like again, he's just like, I literally had my father speak from the heavens and you all still
Right.
don't get this.
No.
So yeah, that's part of why I started fumbling over my words in that reading, is because that's where my brain was going. It was like just
My brain
once
was
again
that.
missing it.
I was trying to come up with that tune in my head. Didn't work out. All right. What else, Father?
So I think as we come towards Lent to see, or come towards the end of Lent,
We're in the home stretch.
that we see, uh, that we ask ourselves and examine ourselves, are we growing in virtue, or are we merely trying to pacify an angry God? What is the point of our sacrifice? What are we doing here? And so that we can end with hearts more in love with God than when we began.
Mm. I've heard you talk before about like the necessity of uh sacrifice. And not maybe not sacrifice, but what's the other word I'm looking for?
Scrutiny.
No, not scrutiny. Where
Discipline?
talk a little bit about like where our hearts should be in sacrifice and all of this. Part of me wants to just like edit all this out and start over again, but we don't do that here. So
We don't. We just go with what we got.
Take effort.
So you can think of this in maybe analogously.
that's close.
You got it.
Close enough.
Yeah.
To our family relationships, right? When you're a kid and your mom tells you to do something, it's, this drama of, I don't want to, or I'm playing a game, or I'm doing something else, I'll get to it later. As we grow, hopefully, like our hearts develop to a place where we almost anticipate going to visit our folks. Oh, let me do this for you. Let me take out the trash. Let me help around the house.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with you guys, with your spouses, right? Like if your spouse has to yell at you every Tuesday to put the trash out,
Thursday.
Thursday,
Tuesday for me.
That's long term disruptive to the relationship. But it is, you grow in love, you say, oh, I'm going to take the trash out Thursday night without being asked. There's not going to be an argument this week. I'm gonna be on it. The same is true in God. Growing in relationship with God, we begin to want to do as God wants us to do, rather than it being a major ordeal. And so we sacrifice in love and less out of obligation.
Got it. The word I was looking for earlier was suffering.
Yes.
So I've heard you preach before about like the difference between sacrifice and suffering. And how does that like, so we're entering into this final home stretch of Lent. We're approaching Holy Week, and everything feels doom and gloom.
Yeah.
And where should our hearts be in sacrifice? And like, are we called to suffer in this time too?
I think we are called to suffer, but suffering is often in this world kind of random, right? That it's baked into the broken world, that after the fall, God says to Adam and Eve, to grow food, you're going to have to sweat, you're going to have to work. Life is going to be suffering now.
Yeah.
Whereas sacrifice is an intentional act, right? If we think of the Old Testament, I'm going to spend money that I could have spent on me to buy a pair of turtle doves or a lamb or something that there's an intention there, not just, oh, I lost money and so I'm suffering a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's not this, like this weekend, actually, Father John was preaching on that at our parish about the levels of like going to the temple to sacrifice. It was about like you had to take the time to go there and you had to spend the money.
Right.
And then the thing you bought with that money, you sacrificed as well.
Right.
There were like the layers of you're doing all of these things intentionally. Yeah. But I think we get into a dangerous spot where, like, Scott, as you talk about like the suffering side, like if we're seeking suffering,
Right.
thinking that is sacrifice, I think that's a slippery area.
Thank you.
Did you do that on purpose?
Oh,
It was me.
I just opened the cap and he
You waited
squeezed
for
it
it
in
to
his
get it.
face.
Just
That would been better.
sorry, Father. Scott just squirted water all over Father for those listening.
It's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Cleansing.
Scott turned off his mic and said, "Sacrifice this."
So this past weekend, my illustration, my image for the homily was C.S. Lewis's book Surprised by Joy, which is his kind of theological autobiography. And he, as a young man, he's an atheist because of the existence of suffering in this world. But he comes to see that as joy pierces through the suffering, that must mean there's a God who loves us. And I think too often we believe that suffering is what brings us holiness rather than sacrifice.
Yeah, that like through the trials of suffering will like, and we can come out better, but the church, like you said, suffering will happen to us naturally.
Right.
Sacrifice is the act of choice.
Yeah.
Like we're making the choice to give up this thing, to have this feeling, this experience in order to.
And I think this is the heart of that old Catholic cliche of offer it up, right? That we have the choice to turn suffering into sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's deep.
It's good.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
All right. You got any dumb questions?
Well, you're just handling that part. And Father Christian tunes out.
Yes.
Great. I do.
Sounds like a country song.
You just like it was the accent.
Yeah, the twang.
It's not Usher. Okay. Scrutinies.
Yeah.
First off, why do we call it a scrutiny? Why the word scrutiny? I was realizing we keep saying this every week. I'm like, oh, because I know it categorizes these readings, but I don't understand why we use the word scrutiny.
So one of the things that we're doing is calling the unbaptized to look at their lives and what do they need to sacrifice to enter into baptism. But by the same token, we're also calling God's attention specifically to them. So there's a multi-level scrutinizing going on.
Sure.
That sounded a little like a
scrutinization.
Scrutinization.
So
if
then
it's just people being confirmed, would it still be scrutinies, or is that only the unbaptized?
It's only the unbaptized.
Okay.
Because they're minor exorcisms. So we're
just a little bit
driving out the influence of original sin and the evil one.
Exorcisitos.
Right.
Minor exorcisms.
Un poquito.
Okay, so we were just asking this question about like, what is it, just a matter of choice whether you decide to actually like read the scrutinies as part of the mass, or is it a matter of if you remember to or not?
I'm scared to say anything because Father Brockmeyer listens to this podcast.
He usually gets all these tough questions. So
I don't know what the rubrics say.
Okay. So we may be filing an official paperwork here.
Right.
We'll go in the same category as the Advent wreath.
Yep. Not lighting the candles in the right order, the Advent wreath. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in theory, let's say you remembered that you had to do the scrutinies this week and you did that. Would you, I guess I'm wondering, like, if you have an associate, Father
Right.
Prakash, right? So you guys have 4 masses across like just on Saturday evening and Sunday. So you go 2 and 2, I'm assuming. So if one of you has the scrutinies, would you just build your homily around that and do it at both masses? And the other might choose different readings to like, that's what I was trying to figure this out at my own parish this weekend. Like, did we not do the scrutinies because that was not the mass that the elect were at, but maybe Father Tim had mass where the elect were. So he, like, I don't know the answer.
I think
He preached on the Beatles, I'm sure, but either way.
I think some priests and parishes do that because we have a permanent deacon preach once a month. We have all the readings the same.
Got it.
And they're all year B this year.
Gotcha. Okay. Because you don't want to trip up the deacons.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Although this week, for some reason, so we've been doing year B all through Lent. This week, all the lectors got terribly confused because the lector workbook had year A in it and year B, and they just got confused.
Oh man.
I'm like, this is what we've been doing all Lent. I don't.
Well, let's ask this too then. But if they haven't been on schedule yet, then
they're not cracking their workbook open.
They're not listening to the podcast.
Thanks. You should require that.
I should.
Everyone should. If you have authority over anyone, make them listen to our podcast.
I've always wanted to do a podcast that was like a linguist meets a theologian, and it's just like a podcast about doing the readings.
Yeah.
Like to prepare people to lecture.
Yeah.
If you want that, drop it in the comments.
Trying to think of the Theolingo. It's like Duolingo, but theology. I was just thinking, I'm a name guy. Okay, so if you're at Mass,
right,
and you have a lector up there, and they just do the wrong reading,
yeah,
what do you do? Like, do you have like, is your responsibility to go be like, no, sorry, we need to do the other one?
If I'm not preaching on that reading, I sometimes just let it go.
What are the chances you even notice if you're not preaching on it?
I would notice. I'm paying attention.
Okay.
I'm not a busy and distracted Catholic.
You're not? No, I've just always wondered about like,
well,
do you just let it roll, or do you stop them and flip to a different reading and like then they're maybe not prepared for that one? And
once in the seminary, the deacon read the wrong gospel and I was preaching on it. So when I went up to the ambo to preach, I pulled the book of the Gospels back out and read the right gospel.
Yeah. That was probably he was probably a deacon who was a student also.
Yes.
Like a transitional deacon. That was probably tough for that guy.
I'm sure it was.
Man, talk about like, what a world where you just get brutalized in seminary. Like you read the wrong guy.
Right.
His classmates probably still bring that up.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do.
Just pull out his report card real quick.
Yeah.
Mark him down a point or two.
Oh man. Okay.
But like I'm not a bad homilist, but
I don't believe so.
2 minutes of while he's reading the wrong gospel is not enough time for me to come up with a completely different homily.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
You ever thought, if I just preach on the other reading, what will people notice?
Oh,
like
yeah.
It'd be like, have you ever had that situation where like they read the wrong one? You're like, I'm just going to go ahead and preach and see.
But
close enough.
But Mass still counts.
Mass still counts,
even if it's the wrong reading.
Yeah, it's illicit. Like you shouldn't set out to do the wrong readings.
Right.
But yeah,
it's fair.
Which is So then you're like borderline. If you don't correct them, and do the right ones, like.
But like contrary to popular belief, I'm not trying to humiliate people.
That's fair. Except for that deacon.
Except for that deacon.
Okay. How much? This is a question that popped into my brain over the weekend. There are like little things that like you can see a priest's personality come out in the celebration of the Mass through like very little things, right? It's how the altar is dressed, how they like the vestments that they wear, the like, and even just like the movements, the placements, how you hold your hands, things like that. How much attention and energy do you put into like those little things just so that because like you feel like they drive you to a holier place and celebrating the mass? Or how much do you like put into those? Because there are also those little things that you do because you know your congregation likes that.
Right.
And like that, like reading the shorter Eucharistic prayers or whatever it is. That was a joke. But
uh, well, like a good example of what my congregation prefers to like necessarily what I would prefer is I almost always in the parish preach without a text, which people have said to me over the years they feel much more connected or whatever when I preach without a text out in front of the altar. But I vastly prefer to preach with a text.
interesting.
I enjoy the writing. I enjoy having more determination over specific wording and the rhythm of the words and all that. But because people really seem to connect better the other way, then I do that.
Have you
You
ever
thought about
thought
a teleprompter?
Jinx?
It'd have to be either really big on the back wall or blocking people's
No,
view.
you got the clear one that like the president uses in the debate.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I hadn't ever thought about it really.
It's interesting that you say that because we've had this discussion with multiple priests about like that side of like preaching
Yeah.
style. Do you go from the writing or like, and I think it's interesting how many like it's obviously to like choice, right? Like
Right.
some people work way better. Like I think still write it and rehearse it, but then work better up there speaking like that. Or others are like hardcore. Like
Right.
I want to spend a ton of, like you said, being very intentional about word order and things like that. I think that's interesting. But
As far as I know, Father Andy and Father Christian, friends of the podcast, always preach with the text.
Father Dufresne always
Yeah.
preaches with the text. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's talked about that. Yeah. And like even Father Tim expressed like he writes his homilies out and
Right.
practices them and then but then doesn't, does it. I think probably similar to you, like
Right.
when you know that that's something that like appeals to your congregation and connects, then
Yeah.
yeah.
But on other things, I think there's a sweet spot, if you will, between my personality and the rubrics and always seeking to be my authentic self within the rubrics of because I think that's when I'm the most prayerful, when I'm the most authentic. And so my my folded hands may be a little bit different than somebody else's because that's just the more natural or comfortable way for me. So
Yeah, I was wondering it like what, because there is like the more you watch an individual priest, you can see, feel like you can see an intentionality and a motivation behind like
yeah,
why they're doing the things they're doing when they're doing them, things like that. But I also think there's a careful balance in like making in people knowing like I'm doing this because this puts me in a more prayerful spot, not
right,
because this is how it must be done.
right,
And that's I think like you said that balance between the rubric and personal.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Anyway.
like a thing for me is having the altar kind of carefully set and smoothed out and everything, because then when I'm praying the Eucharistic prayer, I'll get distracted by like, why is that purificator flipped up or whatever? So
Yeah. Then you scream at your
I
servers.
don't know. I
We've
should
heard
have.
about it.
I
Purificator problems.
Huh?
Purificator problems.
Yeah.
I don't scream at the servers. I
I
do
just
occasionally.
pointed at them.
I do occasionally shoot a look.
Yeah. I've seen that look. Yeah.
What's been the most difficult decision that you've had to make as a priest or a pastor in the past 2.5 weeks?
Uh oh yeah, I can't. Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
That you can share.
I also
The most
I don't
difficult
know
one
anything.
is one I can't really talk about. Uh I think we've had a couple of cases lately of very difficult people issues and just kind of sitting with people uh in a compassionate presentation of the church's teaching and saying, yeah, that like this is suffering, and it can be sacrifice, but we have to kind of walk this very difficult road.
Yeah. What I was thinking about this the other day. We're getting ready to do like the what's it called, where like the you give money campaign thing.
Capital campaign.
Not the capital one, but just like the regular one, like the stewardship,
Right.
renew your stewardship
Yeah.
thing. I just, once a
You
year,
also give time and talent.
yeah, the stewardship and money side of things. But like on the money side of things, it's like, wow, we're being asked to give a decent amount of money to the church. And like, how do you take like the balance between, okay, my parishioners are like they give to the parish. Like there's some ownership in
Right.
that. In some capacity, like they're my customers or
Right.
your customers, versus like you're also the pastor, you're also the leader of the community. You have to make hard decisions sometimes. Have you ever like thought about that like as a delicate balance, or is it
Yeah.
is it difficult to like at some point you just got to be like, I understand that you give this much, but you were not doing liturgical dance.
Right. Yeah, it's very difficult. And I think most of us work not to be unduly influenced by the particular desires of one donor or a couple of donors. But you also have to live in reality and say, if I make this choice, is it essential that I make this choice, or am I just needlessly ticking off the people? And I think that's a question of good leadership, right? That a good leader has to be leading, but can't be too far out in front of his people that a disconnect grows.
Yeah.
You have to kind of work to bring people along with you. Even if I have the authority to make the decision, uh, I try really hard to say, how can I get the most people together on this? And to say, hey, is it essential that this decision be made? Is it essential that this decision be made at this time? How should we go about that? But I think it's one of the difficulties of leading and being a pastor is to say, I am friendly with my people, more or less, right? But not, but I'm not necessarily friends with my people, because I need the space to make those hard decisions that my people may or may not agree with, and I need that freedom and that space.
And I would imagine that you are able to grow in relationship more with members of your parish who are able to prove to you that like those decisions will not affect the relationship, the friendship, like those side of things. So yeah.
But if Mr. Musk wants a Tesla charger out in the parking lot, then he'll maybe get one. No, I'm kidding.
I'm gonna guess, yeah.
Oh,
if he gives,
Do you think Elon Musk has a vanity plate?
I think he has vanity.
I think he probably does have a custom plate, but
I'll bet he doesn't have a plate on any car he drives.
You don't think so?
what, you think he's the Queen of England?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the richest man in the world.
The Pope has a license plate on his Pope mobile.
Yeah. But that's because he leaves his sovereign territory and goes into Italy.
You imagine the line at the Vatican DMV.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, there's no counter in the Vatican that runs at peak efficiency.
No, no. And the Vatican DMV probably there's 15 vehicles, but like you have to like awake somebody and bring them in to, yeah. Sorry. That was
prisoners making the license plate. I just know that that's one job that Indiana prisoners do.
Yeah.
Make license plates.
Heretics pressing license plates in the Vatican.
All right, that's all we got
right.
today. Father
That was
Peter, thank you for
good.
joining
Thank
us.
you. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.